Hey everybody, the topic for this video is something I've seen discussed in a lot of comments online. Why are the sizes and distances in Chinese fantasy novels so ridiculously exaggerated? If anybody out there has not read a lot of Chinese fantasy novels, and specifically I'm mostly talking about xianxia, I guess to some extent Xuan as well, but mostly xianxia novels tend to have sizes and distances that seem just completely beyond anything that could be realistic. For example, a user named Mr. Friendly Guy sent me some information about a little study he did, and he calculated the real world sizes of some places in Chinese fantasy novels, and one of the places he calculated was the planet that the main character lives on in the beginning part of my translation, I Shall Seal the Heavens. That's planet South Heaven. According to his calculations, and this is a very conservative estimate, planet South Heaven would be about 5 times as large as the sun in our solar system. And there's another planet in the I Shall Seal the Heavens book that he analyzed, planet North Reed. And according to him, again, conservative estimates, it would be like more than 10 times the size of our sun. And these are supposed to be planets, not suns, planets. So that's just like crazy, crazy huge, right? Another example is in the most recent chapter of A Will Eternal that I posted just before posting this video. And it's by the same author, by the way, Argem. And again, there are these battleships which appear, and these battleships are like so long. According to my calculations, the length of these battleships, or the largest one at least, is the same as the distance between San Diego and Los Angeles. I mean, depending on, where you start out and where you stop. I'm from Southern California, so I've driven from San Diego to Los Angeles and back many, 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 many times. And, on the freeway, no traffic, 60, 70 miles an hour, it's going to take you a couple hours. And that's how long these battleships, or this one longest of these big battleships, is supposed to be. I mean, that's just like mind-boggling, and it doesn't make sense, right? Because if the ship is that big, you could calculate how wide it was. I mean, even if it's like this pen, it's like really, really long, and then the pen is like 1/20th of the, length. I mean, that battleship is still going to be crazy wide, and that means the river is going to be crazy wide, and then that means the mountain, because there's a mountain that goes over the entire river. I mean, that's huge. Like, it doesn't seem realistic at all. Now, incidentally, I asked the author, Argan, about this, and at the end of the video, I'll tell you what he said. It's kind of thought-provoking. So, why are these huge sizes in xianxia novels? Well, this is not a question that you can look up in Chinese and then just find the answer. I think that if anybody really, really wanted to get a really good answer, they would need to talk to a lot of different authors and get the opinions of a lot of different authors, which I haven't done and I don't think anybody has done. But I do have some good things to think about. One of the things to think about is that in Chinese mythology and in the religions that are the source of inspiration for a lot of these novels, including Taoism, Buddhism, and also Hinduism. Don't forget there's a lot of Hindu elements within the xianxia novels. Anyway, in those mythologies and religions, there are gigantic, enormous gods, creatures, demons, monsters, or whatever, and huge, vast places. It's within the religions and mythologies that go back for thousands of years. So kind of makes sense that you would see the same kind of things in the novels. Another thing is that Chinese fiction itself has featured this kind of thing for a really long time. And the perfect example is Journey to the West. So Journey to the West is one of the 4 classic novels of Chinese literature. Some people will call it like the original xianxia novel. Of course, it's not really a xianxia novel. Xianxia is more of a modern thing, but in Journey to the West, you're going to find all the same kind of things that you find in xianxia novels. You're going to have alchemy with pill refining. You're going to have Taoism. You're going to have demons and monsters and magic and all that kind of stuff. Of course, the Monkey King is one of the main characters he's not the main character, but he's one of the main characters in A Journey to the West. And there's 2 important things about the Monkey King, who, incidentally, in Chinese, they don't call him the Monkey King. They call him by his name, which is Sun Wukong. So, but I'll just call him the Monkey King. The Monkey King has a shape-changing ability, and he also has a magical staff. For those of you who are anime fans, I'm sure you probably know that Goku from Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z and all that was based on the Monkey King. And in fact, the original Dragon Ball was based on Journey to the West, and he has a magical staff that's just like the Monkey King's staff. That staff, according to the description in the novel, weighs more than 8 tons. That's just the normal staff, weighs 8 tons. It can change shape, become larger and smaller. And again, the Monkey King also has that shape-changing ability. Now, guess what? In my research for this video, I didn't realize this before I did this research. The description of the Monkey King changing shape, he reaches a height of, guess what? 10,000 jang. Now, a jang is basically a little bit more than 3 meters. In my translations, I round it down to 3 meters because I don't think that the actual 3.3 meters or whatever is really that important, and rounding it to 3 makes the metric units line up a lot better. The Monkey King transforms into a height of 10,000 jang, which is 30,000 meters. If any of you have read I Shall Seal the Heavens or A Will Eternal, or Renegade Immortal, or any of Argon's novels, and I think a lot of the other Sensei novels as well, you're going to see that 30,000 meter reference a lot, and that's because it's 10,000 jang. So they're going back way into history. You see that exact same thing. Somebody transforming into a giant that's 30,000 meters tall. I mean, if you calculate how actually tall 30,000 meters is, it's like, I mean, it's crazy. It's like not realistic, but there we have it. Going back way into Chinese history in fiction, not just in mythology or religion. Okay, so that's one thing to think about. Now, the next point I want to make is kind of a, I guess this is definitely my personal opinion. I've asked some people about it. I've asked Chinese people about it, but I haven't done any sort of scientific survey or study or anything. But based on what I've seen in China and what I've asked people about, I feel like Chinese people, including the people who read the novels and including the people who write the novels, I feel like they don't really care that much about all of these analysis and details, and it's like in Western culture and in other, not just Western culture, but those of us in the English speaking world who are really into these fantasy, science fiction, comic books, and animated stuff, we're really into the details and the lore and the background and how it relates to the real world that we live in. But I feel like Chinese people just really don't care about that, and that's the authors included. Like in the West, we're so interested in Game of Thrones, and George R.R. Martin creates this really complex world, and he probably knows how many hairs are on the head of each character. I just don't think that the Chinese authors are thinking that way, and the audiences aren't reading the novels in that way either. I think that plays into it as well. So those are some of my opinions and observations about why you see these crazy distances and sizes in the novels. Now, there's another thing to mention, and in this situation, I'm going to sort of play the devil's advocate and explain why it makes sense that it is like that. I really feel like from an objective perspective, I feel like it doesn't make sense. I just got to put that out there. If I was going to write my own Shenxiao novel, I would, be calculating how big the guy's feet would be compared to their height, and then where the main character would be. I would draw it and stuff. Okay, that's what I would actually do. But if I was going to play the devil's advocate and say that it does make sense, one of the reasons why it does make sense is that especially in Shenxiao novels, you're talking about people, the characters and the main character, people who are incredibly powerful beyond the level of superheroes. I mean, these are people who are, have godlike abilities and powers. Let's take, for example, the nascent soul cultivation level, which nascent soul is a cultivation level that appears in a lot of different novels. It can be translated differently. And I took to translating it nascent soul. In I Shall Seal the Heavens, A Will Eternal, Renegade Immortal, and the other novels, that nascent soul level is generally kind of the same, and it's a powerful level within the lower, if you divide up most of the novels that are written by Argon, he basically has sort of 3 or maybe 4 sort of main realms, and nascent soul is like kind of powerful within that lower realm. So it's sort of, it's powerful, definitely powerful, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not. Now, nascent soul cultivators are like, they can destroy mountains. I mean, they can blow up, cities. They're just really, really powerful. And they can travel very, very quickly and fast. I mean, I haven't done any calculations, but, and I would be interested in seeing these calculations about exactly how fast they can travel based on the descriptions in the novels. I mean, I would imagine that it's much, much faster than a jet plane. And when you have people who are that powerful, people who can just blow up cities and mountains and who can, just go across continents in minutes, a world the size of our Earth, even maybe like Jupiter, which is way, way bigger than our Earth, seem like they might not be big enough to contain people who are that epically powerful. This actually sort of is a great segue into the explanation offered by the author of A Will Eternal about those battleships. And I actually mentioned the planets' sizes as well. What I said to him was, Western readers have done, they analyze it and they calculate how big it really is, and they think it's unrealistic. So what do you think? First of all, I don't think he was very amused by this question. Like, he wasn't mad or something, but I don't think he was like, wow, that's a good question. It was more like, I feel like he was like, why are people asking this question? But anyway, his response was pretty succinct. He said, it's fundamentally unrealistic because the worlds are unrealistic because they're not the world that we live in. They're different worlds. So there you go. I guess that makes sense, and that kind of ties in with what I was saying before about the fact that these worlds are basically think of especially Xianxia as being mythological. I feel like if you can think of Xianxia as being mythological, then everything makes sense. For example, in Chinese mythology, one of the most popular stories is about a guy who shot 9 suns out of the sky. So according to the mythology of ancient China, our Earth used to have 10 suns, and he shot 9 of them. I mean, does that make any sense? How could you have a planet that has 10? It just doesn't make any sense. But it doesn't need to make sense because it's a myth. It's mythological. The same thing applies to Xianxia. If you go into it trying to analyze how it would be in real life, then yeah, it's going to be unrealistic because it's not real life. So in that sense, I think Argun's explanation actually hits the nail on the head. I apologize again that this video is not a question that can be answered really quickly or with great accuracy, but I hope that the points I brought up can be thought-provoking to you and hopefully help you to enjoy the novels a bit more. If you have any suggestions for further videos, please feel free to leave it in the comments, and I'll see you next time.